بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أصحاب المعالي والسعادة، أنا أتشرف أني أكون معاكم اليوم لإعطاء نبذة عامة عن نقاط جدا جميلة، والحمد لله أن أصحاب المعالي قبلي تكلموا عن بعض النقاط الرئيسية اللي نؤكد عليها ونشوف كيف تؤثر أيضا على الأمن السيبراني. وأنا سمحوا لي بعد بتكلم بالإنجليش just to cope with the conference language. Good afternoon or good morning, everybody in this regard. I'm really honored to be with you all. Let me give some of the most important things that we see in the cyber domain and how it actually governs many of the things that Their Excellency have mentioned here. I'm sure you've seen UAE vision. We're moving towards an AI nation that will definitely use technologies in every single aspect of our life. However, as mentioned by Their Excellencies, the importance of people in this equation is very important. It's, as a matter of fact, really a vital and an important aspect that we need always to care about. By the end of the day, people are the concerns that we have. And data that they generate are the most important to our critical national security. And this is where our leaders have emphasized on the importance of the virtual aspects, on the cyber aspects, and in the technology, and how we need to definitely leverage and use many of those whenever we go towards those smart cities. And I'm sure we are living in those smart cities. Alhamdulillah, our cities depends on great critical infrastructure that depends on IoTs, that depends on the cloud, that depends on quantum aspects that we've heard from His Excellency, that depends on many of the cyber aspects that we see, as a matter of fact, today in every single mobile and device that we hold, in the critical infrastructure that we use in our applications, as a matter of fact. Our energy sector, our telecom sector, our aviation sector, every single sector depends on this technology, and we need to ensure the cyber security of that. And we need to ensure, as a matter of fact, whenever an attack happens, how to prosecute that, how to govern many of those attacks, how to cope with those new attacks that's happening and really affect and impact us. And I'm really, again, applause the public prosecution and doing and building many of those aspects in order for us to cope with those attacks. This is a single snapshot of our national SOC. It is a security operations center. We see many of those attacks happening against UAE and its entities, be it in the federal level or in the state level. And if you see, the attacks are really increasing every year, every month, and every week, as a matter of fact. We recently, last week, if someone who follows many of those DDoS type of attack, we've been against huge DDoS attacks that's coming from more than 73 nations. All of those IP addresses, all of those attacks perpetrated against UAE and controlled by AI, controlled by botnets, controlled by many of those aspects, and reached more than 200,000 attacks in a day, and continuing, as a matter of fact, on that increase. Alhamdulillah, we use as well AI to defend and to protect from many of those attacks. Yet, many of those attacks goes without prosecution. Many of those attacks goes without a governance that actually dictate how to manage and how to take it into the international laws of armed conflict or international laws of cybersecurity or many of those aspects. And this is what we've seen. One of the major attacks is ransomware. Ransomware have cost the whole world, as a matter of fact, more than $9.5 trillion last year. And this year is expected to reach more than $10 trillion. Again, against whom? There is no single prosecution that happens against any of those perpetrators. Especially if there is no, again, taking down of infrastructures with the Interpol, with the Europol, with many of those great entities. And this is where governance, as mentioned by Their Excellencies, and really bringing all of those entities, countries all together and putting the right aspects. And one of the major things that we are actually focusing in countering is the three major threats. One is cyber crimes, and I'm sure you've heard of many of those scams or impersonation or deep fake or even frauds and these cost as well a huge number of cost from an economical perspective. However, there is another attack that we always as well need to care of, and it was actually mentioned by Their Excellency. It's what we call cyber terrorism. It's changing the public opinion or infiltrating some radicalization points or themes towards the public, or even taking down some critical infrastructures. And this cyber terrorism is really one of the most impacted as well as important things that we need to really counter and build up our governance against. The third thing is cyber warfare. And I'm sure you've heard of the geopolitical aspects around us. All of those geopolitical aspects will always have a harm or an impact on our infrastructure. By the end of the day, they need to use our infrastructure to perpetrate attacks against other nations. That cyber warfare, to us, is a very important aspect that we need to put some rules and governance against. And what really added on this is the impact of national security, since our data lives in those national security, as well as economical stability. And many of the technological lead that we need always to be. And UAE will always be number one in many of those aspects, and that's where we definitely need to balance between innovation, between privacy, between national security, and many of those aspects, and that's what we are doing with many of the entities. Alhamdulillah, today AI is used in every single aspect, be it for defense, be it for active defense or attacks, as we see it from many of those perpetrators. And that AI really added the great efficiency, optimization, cost effectiveness, and really scalability, and many of those quantifiable quality aspects to us. Well, that's what we are continuing and doing and powering many of this in those tools. Agentic AI, I'm sure you've heard many of this term, AI agent, that is actually today used in every aspect of our cyber security detection as well as response aspects. And those AI agents is augmenting the human bodies, the human workforce, in order to help them efficiently work on many of those aspects. So that, alhamdulillah, what we are already developing and working in that regard. Quantum will add many of those computational or breaking any of those encryption, or even doing and building in the economy that we have. Quantum is coming. Alhamdulillah, we've seen it. Now, again, as His Excellency mentioned, in this perspective, it will be a nice and a great driving force for us all. The 5G and many of those warfare as well, some of those added great ultra connectivity, autonomous vehicles, drones, things that actually depends as well on those technology. And it will, if not already used in some of those attacks or crimes, and this is where we need the ability of building that governance in prosecuting any of those aspects. And I'm sure you've heard of the metaverse, and many of the things happens in that world, be it from a regular social crime, including, again, virtual rapes, or including frauds or impersonations, all the way to actually designing and organized crime in this metaverse. And that will infiltrate any drug use, will infiltrate as well any human trafficking, and working on that perspective. There are specific cases or use cases, and I'm sure if you follow many of those social media, you will hear of many of those cases. One of the cases, as a matter of fact, is based on organized group who attacks using deepfake many of the aspects of other companies and trying to filtrate or exfiltrate some of those fund transfer. Now, using deepfake and pretending to be the CEO of a company or any of those aspects will definitely need to be prosecuted in this. Another use case is a state sponsors. And by the way, yes, states, countries do use AI and do attack other nations in order to take many of those lead aspects. This threat actors leverage AI to target phishing campaigns. And I'm sure now with the great ChatGPTs and many of LLM's models, you cannot find a single mistake in any of those paraphrased emails. And this what actually impact us all in really using this social engineers that will actually allows us to click or open any of those files. Another state sponsors using AI in order to attack critical infrastructures. And this is our energy sector. This is our healthcare sectors, and many of those sectors that actually depends on the essence of our life. And this is where we need to ensure many of that governings and even prosecuting on this. And I'm sure you've heard of many of the cryptocurrencies theft. Ethereum, more than 1.4 billion were actually theft using, again, many parts of this technological aspects or virtual currencies and AI. And this is where, until today, the prosecution and finding who is behind that, definitely, or prosecuting them, is still in the open edge. There is also the use of many of those characteristics and using our data in order to generate, and that's in the personal level, in the human factor level. This is where we need definitely as well to ensure the privacy, to ensure if that misuse of any of our data to generate some of those characteristics will definitely add greater value to us and not really harmful aspects to our people, to our kids, to many of those child online security. And there are many of such cases, what we spoke about, the DDoS. And DDoS is actually perpetrated from so many IP addresses, so many countries. And when you start investigating and trying to find who's behind that, you get lost in this great cyber domain. So with that, what are we doing against those attacks? With the great relationship we have with the public prosecutions, with the great relationship we have with the judicial, as well as the legal systems that here in UAE, alhamdulillah, there is definitely the goals that we always need to focus on. The economical stability, the national security, as well as the sovereignty of our technology and global collaboration, as we cannot reach any of this without partnership. And that's actually the main pillars of our national cybersecurity strategy. Focus on building technologies and people and reskilling them in that perspective. Focusing on innovation as a second pillar, focusing on partnership in that perspective, as well as in the protecting and defending of our infrastructure. And the most important part is the governance. We need to have a governance, policies, procedures, a legal system that allows us, as a matter of fact, to work. Well, this is the set of those policies, alhamdulillah, that we've generated in collaboration with the great relationship today we have with all of the government entities, and building into that even the information assurance platform. We need to comply with those information assurance platform. Alhamdulillah, we do it in twice a year to leverage how good our critical infrastructure readiness for any of those attacks. Alhamdulillah, we have an automated platform as well as an AI-based platform that allows us to check many of those aspects, at least to generate that readiness and work in that perspective with high efficiency, with an hyper automation, as well as with the visibility of a unified aspects across all of our infrastructure. We have different initiatives. One of them is Cyber E71, which actually, as well as His Excellency mentioned about the youth, we're leveraging the youth and taking their opinions in many of those aspects in order to build our next generation governance policies as well as startups in that perspective to really reflect the real technological aspects and the use of those younger generation, alhamdulillah. That incubator really help in adding a great economy and stability to us all. The NSOC is one of our major way of detecting attack and even responding to attack. It covers the whole nation, alhamdulillah, continuing and doing many of those aspects. Our main message here is to ensure that cyber culture is spread across all of us, to ensure that we have a governance and definitely a policies that allows us to work together in order to prosecute with the international global aspects any of those attacks. We definitely invest so much in building those critical infrastructures and moving towards technology. We need to protect that, not only by us, but using every single private sector, public sector, people, partnership. Well, that's what we are always at, and that's what we are, alhamdulillah, working with everybody in order to achieve. With that, I thank you very much. And again, honored to be here. Thank you very much, Ma'alikum, for all of the efforts. Thank you.